King Solomon made a few enemies in his time, so when he died and passed on his kingdom to his son Rehoboam, a group of these enemies, led by a man named Jeroboam, came to the coronation of the new king and offered to let bygones be bygones, but only if Rehoboam would lower the taxes that his father had imposed on them. After consulting with some not very wise advisors, Rehoboam's reply was basically, "My little finger is bigger than my dad's you-know-what. Not only am I not going to lower taxes, I'm going to raise them. And instead of using whips to punish you, I'm going to use scorpions." It's practically a scene from the Game of Thrones. Predictably, rebellion and dissolution of the kingdom followed. 11 of the 12 tribes followed Jeroboam and created the new kingdom of Israel. Jeroboam built sanctuaries at Bethel and Dan to replace the temple in Jerusalem, and inside them he placed huge golden calves. Only the kingdom of Judah remained loyal to the house of David. And despite the fact that Judah was by far the smaller, poorer, and weaker of the kingdoms, the house of David still got the last laugh, because we're telling this story thousands of years later, and the version that we tell is based on the propaganda that the house of David wrote. Many of the books of the Hebrew Bible are composite documents, which means that they were redacted together from multiple sources by an editor. One such editor with an agenda is the voice that scholars call the Deuteronomist. The Deuteronomist was probably not a single person. It was more like a school of thought, a group of scribes with a shared viewpoint who took upon themselves the task of editing the bulk of the Torah and the former prophets while composing a lot of new material. Deuteronomistic material can be found sprinkled through the first 4 books of the Torah, but it begins in earnest with the Book of Deuteronomy, from whence the name, and includes the majority of Joshua, Judges, 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, and Jeremiah. In other words, almost all the material pertaining to the story of Israel, from the entry in the Promised Land to the collapse of the monarchy. Generations after the rebellion of Jeroboam and his golden calves, the two kingdoms had continued on their separate way. Israel, the larger and juicier of the two, had been brought to ruin by Assyria, but the kingdom of Judah had been spared, and the house of David saw their opportunity to try to reclaim the 11 tribes and all the territory they had lost. A young boy by the name of Josiah ascended to the throne, and according to the 22nd chapter of 2 Kings, he did what was right in the sight of the Lord. He followed in the way of his father David, and he did not turn aside either to the right or to the left. Remember that phrase. He did not turn aside either to the right or to the left. Josiah was a very pious king, and he dedicated money to the cleansing and refurbishing of Solomon's temple in Jerusalem. While the temple was being cleaned, the high priest Hilkiah found a book of laws which apparently had been forgotten entirely. This new book of laws, most scholars believe, is the core of the book that we know as Deuteronomy, a name which means second law. Josiah ordered the priests to read the book to him, and when it was finished, he tore his clothes, because the book promised curses for all of Israel for having committed idolatry. Josiah immediately set out on a program to cleanse Judah and Israel of all idols, most especially those golden calves that Jeroboam had built. It's no coincidence that by cleansing Israel of all of her shrines and holy sites, Josiah forced everyone to come to Jerusalem, to his seat of power, in order to worship at the temple that the house of David had built. One of the things which distinguishes the book of Deuteronomy from the laws in Exodus and Leviticus is that Deuteronomy contains the only laws in the Torah concerning kings. In Deuteronomy 17, it says, "When he has taken the throne of his kingdom, he shall have a copy of this law written for him in the presence of the Levitical priests. It shall remain with him, and he shall read it in all the days of his life, so that he may learn to fear the Lord his God, diligently observing all the words of this law and these statutes, neither exalting himself above other members of the community, nor turning aside from the commandment, either to the right or to the left, so that he and his descendants may reign long over his kingdom in Israel." Notice how closely Josiah followed those instructions when they found the old book of law in the temple. The text goes out of its way to depict Josiah as an ideal king, and this is the voice of the Deuteronomist. Again and again, the Deuteronomist manages to make the house of David look like the protagonists despite their many flaws. And in the Deuteronomist, God continually makes promises to the house of David, like this one from 2 Samuel. When your days are fulfilled and you lie down with your ancestors, I will raise up your offspring after you, who shall come forth from your body, and I will establish his kingdom. He shall build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. I will be a father to him, and he shall be a son to me. When he commits iniquity, I will punish him with a rod such as mortal use, with blows inflicted by human beings. But I will not take my steadfast love from him, as I took it from Saul, whom I put away from before you. Your house and your kingdom shall be made sure forever before me. Your throne shall be established forever. But the greatest piece of propaganda that the Deuteronomist ever produced was neither law nor history. It was the legend of a hero to the northern tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh, the Book of Joshua. Joshua, son of Nun, had a hard job, succeeding the lawgiver Moses, leading the people of Israel into their promised land and completing the Exodus. According to the Book of Joshua, this occurred through a prolonged and ultra-violent war of conquest and ethnic cleansing. Historically speaking, though, there's no evidence that this war actually happened, and there's many reasons to believe that the formation of the people of Israel occurred very differently than described in the Book of Joshua. But this book was never intended to be history. It was always an allegory, intended to be relevant to the politics of the time that it was written. Joshua behaves as an idealized king in this story. He leads armies, he divides the land, giving out portions to whomever he pleases. He makes legal decrees. And the people of Israel are almost totally obedient to him in this story. Gone are the sullen people that constantly frustrated Moses, and in their place is a crowd of true believers. Listen to these instructions from God to Joshua and see how familiar they sound. Only be strong and very courageous, being careful to act in accordance with all the law that my servant Moses commanded you. Do not turn from it, to the right hand or to the left, so that you may be successful wherever you go. This book of the law shall not depart out of your mouth. You shall meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to act in accordance with all that is written in it. For then you shall make your way prosperous, and then you shall be successful. Does it sound a little like another idealized king with a very similar sounding name, who also meditated on a book of law day and night and refused to turn from it to right or left? The message of the book of Joshua is a promise and a threat. Joshua unites the tribes of Israel the way the house of David wanted to. Josiah longed to be the new Joshua. Joshua also leads a war against the Canaanites to punish them for their idolatry, and the Deuteronomist is not so subtly promising the same to any who would refuse to cooperate with Josiah's program of forcing everyone to worship at the temple in Jerusalem. Josiah never lived up to his promise, nor did any of the other kings of the house of David. And the final form of the Deuteronomistic history takes this into account, pointing out all the flaws with the house of David, while at the same time lifting up the promise, the hope of a united Israel living underneath the righteous sign of the house of David, a hope which suffuses this strange book of books.